Jim and I just had a brief opportunity to meet before the session started. Jim's bio is in your packet, and I suspect many of you already know who he is. But let me just briefly say that he is Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young is active in 140 countries and has approximately 141,000 employees. It is one of the largest professional service organizations in the world. I should also note, because of the topic here, that Jim is chairman of Catalyst and is a very active number of nonprofit boards, including the Boy Scouts and the National Corporate Theater Fund and Rice University. It is, like I said, I didn't meet Jim before today, but I did have the opportunity to see his video, which I think many of you have seen. And one of the things, two things struck me immediately from seeing the video of Jim talk about this issue of women corporate directors is one, just really how closely his thoughts mirrored our thoughts, and I think that's no accident. And the second was just how genuine and passionate his remarks have been, and I'm looking forward to hearing that again. So please help me in welcoming Jim Turley.
Thank you very much. Oh, I need to turn this on. I've been instructed. Am I turned on now? Okay, Holly. Here comes Holly. It's on now. There we go. A little higher. Okay. I usually need help getting dressed in the morning too. You know, it is scary when I'm introduced and someone says they've seen my video, and I'm looking around thinking, what video is he talking about? I thought, I'm not in any rock videos, I know, and so it is scary sometimes with this whole social media, you know, where you end up seeing whom. And I have been sort of more present in the social media in the last couple of weeks because of my board service on Boy Scouts. So that's been all out there as well. Anyhow, the other thing that sort of was sort of a reflection as I was being introduced is what needs to be happening now to drive this critically important agenda forward is talking to a room that is more filled with men than women and getting them to get on with the case. So let me just introduce this very quickly and very easily. And first, thank the CED for hosting this. This is a really important topic. It's a topic that Ernst & Young has cared about for a long time. It's a topic that I think the CED is very smart in picking up. When you think about what boards are going through right now, I don't think there's been a more challenging time, a more complex time. I don't think there's been a time of greater scrutiny of boards of directors, a time of greater change for the boards, and it's driven by a number of different things. It's driven by, on the one hand, I think directors and boards in general have a need to engage more actively with investors whom they represent in court, but also with a wider group of stakeholders. And I think, so this transformation from being sort of a more insular, quiet, often good old boys club in the boardroom is now a more active, engaged with outsiders. I think also, you know, boards are being buffeted by the impact of major shifts in capital. You all know about it, we all read about it, we all live it. Ernst & Young, we need to update my resume, there's about 155,000 people, but we're all seeing the capital shift from the west to the east, and the north to the south, from developed economies to emerging economies, oftentimes from public entities to more private entities. And so there's an array of changes that boards are going through there. And then I think very importantly, they're being buffeted by demographic shifts that are rocking the world. Not just the different ages of populations around the globe, but very importantly, changes in gender and ethnicity that are being magnified as the capital shifts are increasing the importance of societies outside the United States. The demographic shifts are such that when you look forward, probably 70 to 75% of the employees of big US-based global businesses and 70 to 75% of the customers of these businesses will not be white men. Yet, probably 75 to 80% of the executive suites and yes, the boards of directors of these companies are white men. And so you've got this sort of big disconnect going on. I'm reminded of a story that Tiffany has heard because I told it when I was at a White House Project event. But a good friend of mine who's a CEO of a public company was having an argument with his daughter, teenage daughter, 16, 17 years old. And this argument, how many of you have teenage daughters? Okay. Argument, he was not doing very well. And he was getting, a little frustrated. And at one point, she looks at him and says, "Dad, you don't get it." And that did not make him happy. So he tries to rebut this. And then she says, "Dad, you can't get it." And he says, "What do you mean I can't get it?" And she looks him right in the eyes and says, "Dad, you are too pale, too male, and too stale." Now, the sad truth is that characterizes an awful lot of U.S. boards. It really does. And so, if you think about how important having an understanding of both the workforce, business community, and where the world's going is, that's not a good thing. And to complicate it, I don't think the U.S. is out in front, and I think we're running serious risks of being behind when it comes to changing boards. Many of you, this is like preaching to the choir here because everyone's all over these issues, but you see what's happening in places like Norway where legislatively things are being done. You see what's happening in the UK with this 30% club. You see what's happening when, I don't know what the title is, Minister, I think, of Justice, the Justice Commissioner for the EU is saying maybe the EU overall should have a voluntary 30% target. And yet, here in this country, we have been stuck for a long period of time at about 16% of the boards of directors being women. And when you look forward, this is all about competitiveness. It's all about the ability of U.S. companies to compete on a global stage. It's about economic growth, so it's right in the sweet spot of the CED. It's about innovation, to be sure. And I think it's so right that the CED is coordinating this and hosting this today. When we look at this issue within Ernst & Young, one thing that is demonstrably true is that the teams of people that the teams our people will be on in the future are going to be much more diverse than the teams they've been on in the past. Diverse around gender, around ethnicity, around nationality, religion, sexual orientation, you name it. The teams are going to be much more diverse. And the scary truth is that really diverse teams generally don't perform in the middle of the pack. Sometimes they're off the charts great. Sometimes they're absolutely horrible. And it comes down to the culture that exists within the team. Do you have a team right here at this table that brings the ideas from every person into the center of the table? Or do you have a culture among the team, oftentimes dominated by a stale, pale, male, white man, who is sort of either because he's just a Neanderthal, or because he's just not very aware, but his actions will keep the ideas from some great minds private, silent, not on the table. If you have a culture that doesn't get all the best ideas thrown out in the center of the table, you have dismal failure. It's awful. If you, on the other hand, have a culture that brings it all together, that's when the magic happens. That's when innovation happens. That's when the sparks fly. That's when the innovation, like you see in Silicon Valley, where it's like the United Nations walking around the valley, that's when it comes to the surface. And this kind of culture starts where? At the board. If the board doesn't have that kind of thinking and culture, then management's not going to have it, and it's not going to cascade through the organization. And so this truly is about competitiveness, growth, innovation. Now, a lot of different people are looking at this issue from a lot of different perspectives. Often, too often in my opinion, they say it's a supply problem. There's not enough women who are, ready and capable of being on board. I think that's I think that's inaccurate. The video, yes, I better not say what I really think. It's just garbage. The reality is that if you look at the numbers, to move the percentage of women on U.S. boards by 1%, it's just a little more than 50 women joining boards. To double the percentage of women on Fortune 500 boards, it's just about 850 women. We are a big country. We have an enormous number of extraordinarily talented women, highly successful in every different walk of life. It should be relatively easy to double the number. So this is not, from my perspective, a supply problem. This is very much a demand problem. And I think it starts with some of the historic, the only demand for boards is somebody who has been or is a sitting CEO. That narrows the pool to a largely male population right away. I think that's more about what will it do to the prestige of the board than to the effectiveness of the board. I think the demand sometimes is very much narrowed because you've got people, often men, who are CEOs, who are consulting with other people, nominations and governance committee chairs, who are often men, who are trying to find someone who will sort of fit in and think like them. And oftentimes that's another man. So look, I think at the end of the day, we have to do a better job collectively of addressing this from the demand side, not from the supply side. And I think it's something that we all own, and that's why I say at some level, talking to a room full of men about this topic, would help drive the demand even more than talking to all of us who are deeply committed to this. Vitally important. I am honored to be with you today. I look forward to listening to the panel discussion. I've been told that I'm then going to be able to come up and take some questions from you. Is that right, Elliot? That's right. Okay. So anyhow, with that, let me just say thank you for having me here with the CED, to all of you. Look forward to moving forward with the presentation.